It's Thursday, February 27th, 2025. Donald Trump holds his first cabinet meeting. He says the point of the European Union is to screw over the United States, and America dodged a bullet. That's coming up next on the AM Update.
We cannot sustain as a country a $2 trillion deficit. That's the reason I'm here. Getting a lot of death threats, by the way.
The European Union's it was formed in order to screw the United States.
Young girls and women are seeing their dreams of hard-fought equal access to sports opportunities being sacrificed on the altar of political correctness.
What's wrong with the Democratic Party? What's wrong is our country being stole by fascists and Nazis.
This is a biblical moment. All these Negroes were asking me to step down. God forgive them.
This may be the greatest moment in our existence.
A lot of stuff to get to this morning, but first, Attorney General Pam Bondi last night on Fox News previewed what could be today's big news.
Breaking news right now, you're going to see some Epstein information being released.
So what kind of information are we going to see?
What you're going to see hopefully tomorrow is a lot of flight logs, a lot of names, a lot of information. Attorney
General Bondi did temper expectations due to privacy concerns and protection of Epstein's victims.
There are well over, this will make you sick, 200 victims. 200. So we have over 250 actually. So we have to make sure that their identity is protected and their personal information. It's pretty sick what that man did.
Donald Trump held his first cabinet meeting at the White House yesterday.
Say grace and then we'll have our meeting, right? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this awesome privilege, Father, to be in your...
That is Housing and Urban Development Secretary Scott Turner leading that first cabinet meeting in prayer before they got going. Here is Elon Musk, who attended that cabinet meeting, talking about the national debt.
We cannot sustain as a country a $2 trillion deficit. The interest rates, just the interest on the national debt now exceeds the Defense Department spending. We spend a lot on the Defense Department, but we're spending over $1 trillion on interest. If this continues, the country will become de facto bankrupt. It's not an optional thing, it is an essential thing. That's the reason I'm here. And taking a lot of flack and getting a lot of death threats, by the way.
Elon Musk at the first Trump cabinet meeting saying he's gotten a lot of death threats for just pointing out the fact, but everybody knows that $2 trillion deficits and the unsustainable national debt, well, it's not just going to go on into perpetuity forever. During a Q&A with reporters, Trump said on the issue of trade...
But I love the countries of Europe. I love all countries, frankly, all different. But the European Union's it was formed in order to screw the United States. I mean, look, let's be honest. The European Union was formed in order to screw the United States. That's the purpose of it. And they've done a good job of it, but now I'm president.
What will happen if these countries where the EU retaliate?
They can't. I mean, they can try.
In other news, attorney Harmeet Dillon, who is Donald Trump's nominee for Assistant Attorney for Civil Rights at the Justice Department, had her confirmation hearing yesterday and focused in on the issue of protecting female spaces.
Young girls and women are seeing their dreams of hard-fought equal access to sports opportunities, of even basic privacy, modesty, and dignity in women's private spaces being sacrificed on the altar of political correctness. Generations of young people have been denied educational opportunities because of their immutable characteristics, instead of merit, even in the face of Supreme Court precedent that clearly bans such admissions policies.
Trump's nominee for Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, Harmeet Dillon. And, well, what a refreshing change, of course, at the Justice Department. I'm glad that's where they are now as opposed to where they were in the past. James Comey is being investigated for running a honeypot scheme when he was the FBI director. I'll tell you all about that in just a little bit. But first, another reminder, America dodged a bullet. Here's Minnesota governor and former vice presidential candidate Tim Walz caught on a hot mic.
You see the nonsense that's being put forward on that. We're going to need your voice there, because I would just end with this. And we're seeing it in these town halls. That charismatic leader's not going to come there. You know, I see the pundits on TV. What's wrong with the Democratic Party? What's wrong is our country's being stole by fascists and Nazis, and we're trying to do all we can to try and do it. But we need to use all the tools.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz's comments were brought about by Alpha News and Senator Nate Wiesenberg of Little Falls, Minnesota, during Minnesota Nurses Association's Day on the Hill event earlier this week. Tim Walz just saying out and out, yeah, we're run by fascists and Nazis. That guy was not that far away from reaching the White House. In New York City, here is Mayor Eric Adams.
This is a biblical moment. You know, when Jesus was on the cross, he said, God, forgive them, for they know not what they do. All these Negroes who are asking me to step down, God, forgive them. Are you stupid?
Yeah, that's Eric Adams, mayor of New York City, just casually comparing himself to Jesus Christ. I would like to remind you, as he waits for word on whether or not he's going to be going to federal prison or something, I don't really care about him. Just want to remind you that Adams actually endorsed Kamala Harris and campaigned for her right up until Election Day. Just FYI. Progressive filmmaker and activist Michael Moore this week wrote a lengthy blog post warning that by deporting illegal immigrants, America may be missing out on the next equivalent of Apple co-founder Steve Jobs, or one that'll save the world from a killer asteroid. Moore's piece, Our Muslim Boy Wonder, used Jobs' origins as son of a Syrian migrant to critique the Trump administration's deportation efforts. Moore wrote, quote, "Who is really being removed by ICE tonight? The child who would have discovered the cure for cancer in 2046? The ninth grade nerd who would have stopped that asteroid that's going to hit us by 2032? Do we even care?" So 2046, the year 2046, which is one of the dates that he discussed there, Michael Moore. That is in 21 years. 21 years ago was 2004. Okay, stay with me. 21 years before 2004 was 1983, which was just a few years before Reagan's amnesty. So we've already had a full generation of basically unfettered and unchecked illegal immigration. And the last time I checked, cancer has not been cured. But what do I know? I'm not Michael Moore. In Canada, politician Chrystia Freeland had this story to tell.
A few weeks ago, in Saskatoon, I met a little 4-year-old girl. She asked me whether I could prevent Trump from invading our country. And that's why I am standing to lead the Liberal Party and to become the next Prime Minister of Canada.
And Chrystia Freeland, she is a politician from Canada. And let he who has not had existential conversations with toddlers cast the first stone. After all, just the other day, my son Ben came up to me and he said, and I quote, dearest father, when may I enlist in the military to take on the hordes of Canadian savages? When may I do this, Father? And I said, Benjamin, my son, I am so proud of you. All right, when we come back, James Comey, former FBI director, is being investigated for running a honeypot scheme while he was working for the federal government. One of the biggest indications that legacy media needs to die unfolded this week, and another near miss. It's coming up next. An American Airlines plane arriving at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport discontinued its landing, performing a go-around and an air traffic controller's instruction to avoid getting too close to another aircraft departing from the same runway. The maneuver, involving American Flight 2246 from Boston, happened at about 8:20 a.m. on Tuesday, less than 2 hours before another plane we told you about yesterday, attempting to land at Chicago's Midway Airport, was forced to climb back into the sky to avoid another aircraft crossing the runway. Southwest said Flight 2504 from Omaha, Nebraska, safely landed after their crew performed a precautionary go-around to avoid a possible conflict with another aircraft that had entered the runway. The American flight landed safely and normally at National Airport after air traffic control instructed pilots to complete a go-around to allow another aircraft more time for takeoff. Aviation experts said the maneuvers are not entirely uncommon on commercial flights for various reasons. From bad weather to a deer walking on the runway, pilots can execute a go-around maneuver without much notice from passengers if the plane is still flying high enough on its approach. Pilots are trained to conduct go-around maneuvers, of course, and when pilots are relying on instruments to fly an approach to a runway in weather with low clouds, they are required to plan for the possibility of a missed approach. I get And I've seen the statistics, and what we've seen so far this year is generally in line with what we have seen in previous years. It just seems so odd to have so many incidents like this happen in such a short and compressed amount of time. The FBI is reportedly beginning an investigation into allegations that the agency, when headed by then-Director James Comey, launched a honeypot operation to infiltrate the 2016 Trump campaign with 2 female agents. The Washington Times reported that the agency is looking into an alleged 2015 operation, which was revealed by a whistleblower in a disclosure to House Judiciary Committee last year, and was said to involve 2 agents acting as honeypots while traveling with the Trump team. Honeypots typically refers to undercover agents who act romantically interested in a target in order to draw out information. In the disclosure, a copy of which was obtained by various media outlets, including Fox News, the whistleblower is said to be an FBI employee who was involved in an off-the-books investigation targeting then-presidential candidate Donald Trump. The whistleblower reportedly claimed that they knew Comey had ordered a probe into Trump and had personally directed it shortly after Trump announced he was running for president. The whistleblower claimed 2 agents were inserted into the high levels of the Trump campaign and were directed to act as honeypots when travel with Trump and his campaign staff. However, the investigation was allegedly closed because a media outlet obtained a photograph of one of the agents and was about to publish it. The whistleblower said they observed one or more employees being directed to never discuss the operation with anyone, including those involved in the operation. Trump fired Comey in May of 2017. Days later, Robert Mueller was appointed as special counsel to take over the Crossfire Hurricane probe and investigate whether the Trump campaign had colluded with Russia to influence the 2016 election cycle. That investigation, of course, as you know, yielded no evidence of criminal conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia. Is James Comey one of the biggest bad guys of the last 10 years? I think a lot of people would say so. But I was one of the stupids who thought, at least at the very beginning, maybe the first couple of months after Mueller was appointed as special counsel, there was at least some there. Obviously, no. It was just a hoax. It was a giant hoax. All perpetrated, we're now learning, allegedly, thanks to this whistleblower, all perpetrated by James Comey, who was already leading honeypot probes, honeypot operations, off-the-books operations into the Trump campaign before he was even elected president. That's even separate from the spying allegations, well, proven allegations, that the FBI just spied on the Trump campaign while he was a citizen, a private citizen. Again, you can't make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up either. Jake Tapper of CNN has written a new book due out in May called Original Sin: President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again. Surely you think anybody who writes a book coming from the mainstream media with the title President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and Its Disastrous Choice to Run Again, surely you would think they'd have some level of self-awareness. Maybe they were really trying to call balls and strikes. Nope, this is Jake Tapper we're talking about.
How do you think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that?
This is his interview with Lara Trump from 2020.
First and foremost, I had no idea that Joe Biden ever suffered from a stutter. I think what we see on stage with Joe Biden, Jake, is very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable
you are
to
no
watch somebody on stage search for
that's so amazing. It's so amazing to me that
try and figure out an answer.
A cognitive decline.
Well, when you're trying to tell me that what I was suggesting was
I think that you were mocking his stutter. Yeah, I think you were mocking his stutter, and I think you have absolutely no standing to diagnose somebody's cognitive decline. I would think that somebody in the Trump family would be more sensitive to people who do not have medical licenses diagnosing politicians from afar. Plenty of people have diagnosed your father from afar.
Yep. That's the guy who wrote Original Sin: President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again. This is not just zero self-awareness. This is malicious lack of self-awareness. Jake Tapper should be sued out of existence. Not just fired. He should just be sued out of existence. Again, like this and many other examples involving the media, he should never show his face in society again. That's how embarrassed he should be to even wake up in the morning. Well, surprise, surprise. Check out this story from WGGB-TV in Massachusetts.
21-year-old Colombian national Robert Rodriguez Melendez in court accused of rape. The victim, a woman waiting for her food to be delivered by a female Uber Eats driver. The woman in the driver's profile, allegedly his own mother.
When the delivery driver arrived, it was a male party rather than the female party listed on the delivery driver's profile. The driver did not speak English, but told the named victim that she needed a 4-digit code in order to complete the delivery.
That's when trouble started. The victim allegedly let him in out of the cold and called her Spanish-speaking friend on a 3-way call to Uber tech support.
At some point during the call, the man gained possession of the victim's phone and disconnected the call.
The hang-up led to horror. Eventually, the rape in a nearby bathroom ended apparently due to the victim's Spanish-speaking friend calling her incessantly.
She reported that she picked up her phone, called Miss Maldonado back, and asked her to tell the suspect to leave.
Days after he fled the attack, police tracked the illegal immigrant down. His case moved from district to superior court. Prosecutors want him behind bars.
That is why Donald Trump was elected. One of many reasons Donald Trump was elected. This man should have never been in the country. Massachusetts illegal alien. You can't be an illegal alien from Massachusetts. An illegal alien from Colombia who was arrested in Massachusetts, working illegally as an Uber Eats driver, raping a woman while working. At least that's what he's accused of doing. Should have never happened. Not even a blue state. Should have never happened. Never forget what Joe Biden did to this country's border. And now here's this. Here is comedian Jim Breuer discussing the current state of play. He doesn't make too many jokes here, but I think his thoughts and what he has to say, his perspective is interesting nonetheless.
What's being exposed right now may be the greatest. I'm really being dead honest. This may be the greatest moment in our existence, in our nation, in history, that we know that we're living. Because now that you see all the money that was stolen from you, they use the word tax. If you just change the word to tax, change the word tax to stolen. They stole it from you. And something I'm discovering. So if you create a fund, and I learned this way back when I first started getting into entertainment and I started learning about charities. So basically it's all tax free and you can hide your money by moving it to this trust, that trust, this foundation, or that foundation. And that's how everyone hides their money. And then they paint it as, hey, this is going to help humanity. It's going to help the frogs. It's going to help environment. It's going to help the people starving in Africa. It's going to whatever they use the word to gain your heart and your emotions. You work your whole life. They take your money. They pretend they're putting it there, and they tell you, and they make their little 3-minute video like, this is what it's going to, and these show the suffering. Thank you.
Yep.
And it goes right here.
That is comedian Jim Breuer with his take on the current state of play with everything going on with the Trump administration, specifically Doge and what they are uncovering. You know, you might be tempted to think that is overstating things a little bit. I don't. I really do think that with Doge, there is a chance to really make headways with the normie Americans. When you really expose what like the CIA is doing, what they were spending your tax money on, that gets people's attention. We all have attention deficit disorder to some degree, but things like this, in a constant drip, drip, drip basis, maybe that can start to make some headway. All right, when we come back, we'll have your results from the poll of the week. It's coming up next. And finally, Air Analysis. I asked you, poll of the week, is Apple circling the drain as a company despite its massive advantages? Gave you 4 options. Other is in last place. I'll get to those responses in just a little bit. In third place is no, they haven't lost their way. You're being too hard on them at 16%. At second place is, well, it's a mixed bag. 39% of you voted for that. And at 42% and in first place, yes, Apple has lost their soul. Let's go to your responses. Here's Alex first. He voted for mixed bag. My uncle worked for an Apple as a mechanical engineer in China for over a decade. He, along with many others, quit when Tim Cook took over. No one liked him, and employees said he did not share the vision that Steve Jobs had for Apple. I blame Cook for Apple's stagnation and crappy photo album layout. I still have Apple everything, but my enthusiasm for the company has been diminishing. That's almost, especially the latter part of that. I can't say that I have an uncle who worked for a mechanical engineer for Apple, but the latter part of that is basically where I am. I just encourage my parents to get a Mac Mini because it's still probably the easiest computer to use, and they still, by and large, work pretty well. But overall, it's just on the decline. It's kind of weird. It's subtle, and you can't put a finger on it necessarily. But yeah, it just something is not right. It's lost the magic is the best way that I can describe it. Because especially as a millennial, going from, oh my goodness, these iPods, they can hold, 100 songs or whatever it was with the original iPods. And you saw all the cool kids. Well, not all the cool kids. I grew up in southern Iowa, so there was maybe one or two kids in school that had an iPod that I would see even as a homeschool. I didn't get to see it that often because I wasn't in the public school that often for various functions. And man, that is really cool. That little thing without a spinning disc or anything like that, it can hold 100 songs. That's incredible. And then going from that to the color iPod, that's even cooler. And they got even smaller. And then the video iPod, they were just incredible devices. And then the iPod Touch, and it was just an amazing time to be alive. And maybe that's my problem a little bit, is that I'm so used to these great leaps in consumer innovation, not just these really, really specific niche applications for a very niche market like the Apple Vision Pro, which is only available for really, really high prices. So only a few people are going to be able to afford those. That is innovative, but it's not really available for the masses. I think maybe that's the problem that I view Apple nowadays as, but it does seem like there was a definitive shift when Tim Cook took over. Justin Plaster said, "It's a long, slow death from what they once were. They've lost sight of their core values when they had the hip, cool things that just work better than other products. Most concerning is their acquiescence to government privacy invasions. Maybe their announcement of U.S. investment can make an impact. Their stuff should be made here anyway." That's kind of what I'm thinking as well. And I remember back during the San Bernardino terror attack, Apple came out and said, no, we're not going to unlock the terrorists' phones. We're not going to do that. And I thought, you know what, at least they're being consistent. Well, we've gone from that, and just a few years later, well, it's more than a few years later, but not very much longer later, Apple's just saying, yeah, UK government, you can have all the user data that you would like. Mrs. Dizzy Funt says, been an Apple user since I bought myself a Mac in 1995, been using it to make money since 2000, graphic design, TV production, etc. Still won't switch to PC for work, but I am truly disgusted by what the company is doing to themselves. So I am ambidextrous. I grew up using a PC. My first personal computer was a Mac. I use really the equal amount of time during my day job. I use both Mac and PC. At home for this project, I use a Mac, and that's probably what I would prefer to use for the foreseeable future. But yeah, I'm not as partial to Mac as I once was. Arthur Grimm will end with this one. Steve Jobs would return from the grave and start firing. Apple has long ago lost innovation. Now it's a service company that recycles yesterday's products and copies features from its competitors while claiming it's all new. It's Jeb Bush's "Please Clap," a former Apple employee. So Arthur, you used to work for Apple, so obviously you had an affinity for the products, but you too have become disillusioned. It's really sad. It really is sad. Because as I stated, and I'll restate one more time before we close out today, when you have a company with all of the advantages that Apple still enjoys, it should be a pride of a country. It should be the pride of a country, particularly a tech company like Apple. But it seems like it's fast becoming anything but. That'll do it for a Thursday. Tomorrow is Ask or Tell Me Anything. You can ask me any question you want. Tell me any news story you think needs covered on the AM Update. Make your submissions. Look for the pinned post at my X profile at Real AM Update. Talk at you again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntire, and this is the AM Update.